You're listening to the Replatform podcast, sponsored by Ampliance, an API-first headless CMS and DAM, and Klaviyo, an email and SMS marketing automation platform. Today, you're just stuck with me, James Gerd. My co-host, Paul Rogers, is unavailable. So hello to our regular listeners, and a warm welcome if you're joining us for the first time. You will be truly underwhelmed by my mediocrity, but delighted by our guest today. Do subscribe to get new episode alerts. We drop one every week, and we'd love a like on YouTube, Spotify, Apple to make us feel warm inside. So that's my introductory shtick. So let's now talk about the topic, and I'll introduce you to our guest today. So the topic is building an online marketplace for sustainable and eco-friendly products from independent UK brands. So really interesting brand and product. What we're going to cover is choice of e-commerce platform of BigCommerce, building a product management system in-house, and using SearchSpring for product data and so much more. So let me introduce our guest. Ed Davies, you're the CEO and co-founder of Wearth London. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. How are you, James?
Oh, I'm very good. One thing, actually, I always wonder whether it's Wearth or Worth. I kept struggling with that, and I believe it is Worth, though. That's how you say it.
Yeah, we do get this a lot. I think some people even are searching kind of Wearth on Google. Yeah, it is Worth, but kind of Wearth still works. So if people want to call it Wearth, they can do.
Excellent. So before I start asking you our usual gambit of questions, can you give the listeners like the worst story? Like, how did the brand come to life? What's your journey so far? And also, how much fun are you having?
Yeah, it's obviously a great question to start with. So basically, after uni, myself and Imogen, our other co-founder, at the time we were basically starting to learn more about trying to be more eco-friendly and trying to basically have more of a positive impact on our planet. But we found it difficult. We found it difficult to find brands which align with our values. And we often found we were also having to kind of do these deep dives into the internet to find products which were not only eco-friendly, but more oriented to what we wanted in terms of being a little bit more contemporary and stylish. So what we started to do is do some more research and realize there were a lot of these independent UK brands out there, just weren't always easy to find. So we wanted to create an online platform which brought these brands together with two main aims, really. One was to create a platform for these brands and a community really to help them grow, whilst also making it easier for consumers to shop and live more consciously, with this overall ethos of making it lost my train of thought now. With the overall ethos really of trying to change the perception around eco-friendly living, helping to move it into the mainstream by ultimately having this belief that no one has to be perfect to make a difference. You don't have to be this perfect eco-warrior who's producing no waste and is only eating vegan food to actually have to make a difference. So we're trying to basically help encourage the mainstream, as well as obviously the people who are already very conscious, to be able to discover products and content which helps with their journey so far.
Fantastic, really interesting. Yeah, that's a nice way of putting it. You don't have to be perfect to make positive change. So let's start with the technology stuff, and then we're going to talk some more about that eco and the sustainability angle later on. But let's start with the tech stack. What made you select BigCommerce as an e-commerce platform? Everyone who listens into podcasts always wants to know, like, why do you go down the route? Because there are so many platforms out there.
Yeah, of course, it's obviously so fundamental. So originally when we started Wearth, we launched with Shopwired, which I don't know whether you've come across as kind of a smaller UK platform. We were choosing between Shopify and Shopwired at the time. And one of the reasons why we went with Shopwired is they had their own kind of in-house development team who would help basically build out the website. And we didn't have much experience at the time then. And they have been a really great platform, really kind of no issues. What we found though, so for example, now we basically bootstraps from year one. We haven't had any investment until later last year, so 3.5 years in. And what we found is that in our first year had about £34,000 of sales. Nothing to kind of write home about, but we're kind of happy that some people were getting to the website, and we were ultimately learning about our brand, what we wanted to achieve, and kind of our overall messaging, as I say, and kind of it being more subtle in terms of not shouting, saying you have to save the world. It's more about if you make these changes, it can actually make a difference. However, we started to scale quite quickly. So from 34,000 in our first year, within a couple of years, we were kind of hitting about 1.5 million in sales GMV. So we kind of got to a stage now where we were finding we needed more apps. We needed more kind of functionality to kind of get us to that next enterprise level scale. And although there are some big companies on Shopwired, we felt that the app ecosystem wasn't strong enough for what we wanted to achieve. So we ended up having to kind of do custom integrations to certain software, which inevitably made it more difficult and expensive. So we wanted to move to a platform which had that existing ecosystem. And we kind of spent two months kind of looking at platforms, watching lots of YouTube videos and blog posts and talking to different people. And BigCommerce and Shopify Plus quickly came the two kind of front runners in that side of things. Imogen, our other co-founder, she has another business called Relikes, and they use Shopify for their business, so she's very familiar with it. And we saw BigCommerce as emerging as, I think, one of the, I'd say, the main competitor to Shopify. Obviously, Magento has been there, but I think BigCommerce, in my opinion, kind of sits in between Shopify and Magento in terms of the space, in terms of having the openness, in terms of the headless, and just being a little bit more of an open platform. Whilst Magento obviously can be very expensive developer-wise. So we're obviously choosing between Shopify Plus and BigCommerce. And it was somewhat a toying cost, but at the same time, there were kind of two main factors which helped us go with BigCommerce. Firstly, for us, SEO is very important. It has been kind of from the start, and it's one of the kind of key drivers behind our growth. And with kind of Shopify's URL structure, it would have meant that we would have had to basically change all of our URLs, whereas BigCommerce already matched our category structure and URL structure, so there was no change there. And that kind of also just gave us an insight into thinking kind of from an SEO point of view, although kind of Shopify can obviously rank well still, we wanted to have a platform which has a little bit more focus on SEO, which BigCommerce arguably has, although it obviously depends on the business. Another element was finding 5874, kind of a BigCommerce specialist agency. We felt it would be a good fit for our goals, and ultimately we felt that if we have a good development agency who we trust and who are specifically focused on BigCommerce, that it makes more sense to go with them over Shopify.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks. I love these questions because everyone has different sets of criteria and decision motivation. So interested here. And yeah, you mentioned 5874. They're good friends of ours as well. We like them. I find it interesting. You went from technology, we had like their own development, into like the open SaaS world with BigCommerce, where you pick a development partner. And some people find that move from proprietary to that open world with agency plus vendor hard to get their head around because it's a different model. Love to hear, like, having gone through that process of picking a partner on top of the platform, what advice could you give other people? Like, what should people look for in a partner? What makes a good partner alongside a good platform?
I think a key part of it is the human aspect. If you get along with the team and, for example, also what their general interests are and looking at what they've built before. So they've worked with some big companies like Carluccio's and kind of Johnny Walker. So they had the reputation there, but kind of speaking to them, they came across very kind of friendly and kind of got on well with them, and they'd also just kind of written a white paper on kind of eco-friendly commerce, and so there was an interest there amongst their team. We spoke to different agencies from the Shopify BigCommerce world, and yeah, it was really that human aspect, as well as obviously looking at their credentials and the team. And one of the things we liked about 5874 is the fact that they also had a marketing side as well. Although we obviously didn't work too closely with the marketing team, it meant that they had that kind of breadth of experience, for example, with SEO, so just to double check everything's making sense from that point of view, because it's obviously so fundamental for us to be able to migrate in a way which we're not losing that SEO value, because ultimately, well, we probably wouldn't be in business if the URLs, if the traffic suddenly drops massively. So someone who had experience, I think if we stayed in Shopwired, we probably would have just done a redesign with a freelancer or using some of our own experience. But given we're migrating to a new platform which we weren't familiar with, I think is kind of essential to have that someone who's been there, done that, and they had a great team, and working with several people from the design phase to the overall kind of tech stack that we've developed.
Yeah, it's interesting you say the people side. I think the cultural fit is underestimated in RFPs and selections, and it really screw up relationships later on when there is just a kind of jarring of working approaches. So yeah, interesting.
And at the end of the day, we worked with we still pretty much every week have a call with them, but we were working with them intensely for 8 months. It's effectively an extension of your team, and it's almost the decision process is almost like an interview for hiring a member of your team. You kind of have to see whether there's that fit, as you say.
Yeah, I think that's a nice way of framing it. Recruit them like you would be recruiting internally, because it's that close relation. Excellent. And we were talking just before we start recording about you're building out your own product management tool rather than going down the route of a third-party PIM like Akeneo. I'd love to. Our audience, I think, would really enjoy understanding this. What has made you go down the route of building a product management tool, and what will it do? What will the added value to you rather than just using an e-commerce platform for product data?
Yeah, of course. So I guess to provide some context, at the moment, so we see Wearth as a managed marketplace. So rather than Etsy, where the brands would list all their products, do their own customer service, do their own marketing, what we effectively do is partner with the brands quite closely, get all the information about the products, which we'll get onto later, and upload the products ourselves, kind of making sure that they kind of really fit into, for example, the lifestyle images. So although we're using different imagery, if you go down the site, there's no general feel of terms of like nice lifestyle, Instagram style photos as the main photos, rather than these kind of cut out floating images. So we've been uploading our own products since day one, which was fine when we had 20, 30 brands. Now we're working with 300 brands. It's just become a big bottleneck, both in terms of editing existing products, but also getting new products on the platform, as well as being able to quickly upload new brands as well. So it's been one of those things where we wanted to address it for a while now, and we've been looking at PIMs for a good 6 months to really see what's out there. Looking at kind of Akeneo on the more enterprise scale, and then some smaller, more simplified PIMs. What we found though is that what we need is actually relatively simple. We need the vendors to be able to go in, upload or edit products, have it tailored towards the information we need. So for example, we were looking at Webcool, which has effectively a simple product form, but there was lots of information which wasn't needed, and we wanted to have basically make it as efficient as possible and as easy for our brands to upload. And then there's an approval process where we can edit the photos or descriptions just to make sure it's all in alignment with the information that we need. And then it gets pushed through to our website. And we found that ultimately the PIMs were too complicated for what our needs. And as a result, we're also, in terms of pricing, very enterprise heavy. If you're spending kind of £2,000 or £3,000 a month on a PIM, at least, it's obviously quite a significant amount of money, considering we're obviously still somewhat in a startup phase, although we have recently finished a raise. So ultimately, we wanted a solution which was basically fitted perfectly into what we need. And I think there is a gap in the market for more simplified PIMs, which just do what they say on the tin, really, especially when you have kind of multiple people working on creating products. And I think there would be a use case for this system to not only be a multi-vendor system, and that's one of the things that many of the PIMs didn't even have. They didn't have the ability to have lots of different brands being able to upload products, but also being able to allow, maybe you have 3 or 4 people creating and merchandising products on your website, to be able to easily streamline that process and have it tailored again towards the information needed, not all the different, because obviously there's so many different fields you can fill out, having it tailored to exactly to that, to make it basically quick and easy to upload and get it onto the site.
Yeah, it's interesting that whole supplier enablement piece is such a challenge when you're in marketplace commerce. The product data management and quality, so that you don't have junk on your site, but even the speed at which you get people on, so that a new supplier doesn't get put off and think, do you know what, I'm giving up.
Yeah, exactly. It's one of the upsides of the marketplace, in that if we wanted to upload a new brand, it would take us kind of 3 or 4 weeks to do it, from contacting to getting it live. Whereas with this new product management system, it might take 1 or 2 weeks. And it would be a much easier process all round, because ultimately the brand still needs to provide us with all the information on an Excel. The difference is now they can do it within a system where we then just have to approve it and as I say, kind of make sure it's all making sense.
We did a podcast recently with Convictional, who focus on the piece before that, supplier enablement and platforms to get people to rapidly sign up suppliers, not the product data side, but the onboarding bit. So yeah, it's an interesting area because marketplace commerce is growing. So, but we're talking about product data. I know you also use SearchSpring, and I know that product data is critical because, I'm a customer. I mean, I love the site. I've bought so many of the products. My current favourite is the men's deodorant, all natural ingredient. It's fantastic. But there are so many different attributes. You've got vegan, cruelty-free. I mean, there's so many different subsections of what sustainability and eco-friendly is, and that level of data granularity is so important. So, why SearchSpring, and why is something like that needed in addition to BigCommerce? I think it would help people to understand how additional bits of technology improve control and customer experience.
Yeah, so as you say, there's a lot of information provided by the brands, and this is intentional. It's to basically find as much information from the brand so we can allow the customers to make an informed decision, and also shop by certain characteristics to align their journey with their values. So if you're talking about you're looking for a natural deodorant or vegan deodorant, you can obviously filter by, all of our products are vegan friendly as well, but you can filter by certain values. One of the most popular ones is kind of plastic free or made in UK, so you can kind of support UK makers or have a completely kind of plastic free product. So with this, we wanted to have a complete solution across search, product recommendation, and merchandising, where it was more AI driven. And previously we would have to, from a merchandising point of view, we'd have to be ranking lots of different products manually, looking at data and trying to work it out. Whereas with SearchSpring, what it offers us is we were looking for a solution which went across those 3 areas. Before we were using Salesfire for our search. We were using another company for our recommendations, and we thought it'd be better to have it all unified under one system. So there's all that data being shared, and hopefully it's obviously we launched in November, so there's still a bit of optimization and learning to do. But we think with the way AI is also developing, it should really help with both from a time perspective, but also helping to improve the customer journey and creating more relevant products. Because if we can look at that data, we can obviously start to make recommendations on, it's not obviously only products we'd be interested in, but products which have values which ultimately you share, and it helps achieve that. So that's basically the reason behind SearchSpring, and I think they're a nice kind of middle ground between the super enterprise solutions, which can be of a fortune, whilst having those enterprise level features and the support and the technology to really back it up. What's nice about it as well is that although we want to have that kind of automation, if we want to, for example, push these seasonal products for Christmas, it's very easy in their back end to do that. It's a drag and drop effectively. So there is that granularity if you need it, which I know can be important, especially given the kind of seasonality and trends of certain products.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's so much technology out there. Was price the main driver of how you got to SearchSpring, or was it recommended, or you used it before? Like, how did you get to that versus others?
So this is one of the other benefits of 5874 is they have an ecosystem of partners who they've worked with previously, have a relationship, and know ultimately works well and has done for the customers. So it was a recommendation from SearchSpring. We were looking at another, it might be Klaviyo. I don't, either Klaviyo is not Klaviyo. There's so many Klaviyo is Klaviyo. But yeah, we went with SearchSpring because of their recommendation, and considering it was so widespread across our site, from the category pages to recommendations to recently viewed. 5874 obviously very used to developing websites using SearchSpring. Any issues would be resolved quickly, and I think that helped with the build phase, especially as there's lots of kind of nuances with the personalizations to make it really work as it should do.
Yeah, I think that's a really good bit of advice as well, is when you're working with an agency partner like 5874, whoever you're working with, if they have experience of implementing a tool, start there if you don't have a predefined favorite, and look at whether that can satisfy the use cases, because there's a lot of benefits if you know somebody's integrated in it and has got an existing approach to it. That can save you time and money as well. So next question I've got is, I guess it's more around kind of brand and the people you work with and your audience. So on the site, I think you state like 80% plus female founded brands. I'd love to know, why is this? Is this like a core driver, and how do you actually go about achieving this? Do you have a specific KPI for number of female founded brands, for example?
Yeah, of course. So being an ethical and conscious business, we have to have very kind of strong values in lots of respects from the brands we work with, in terms of the own schemes we have, in terms of kind of having carbon neutral delivery and helping to plant trees. And ultimately our goal is to champion independent brands and champion UK entrepreneurship. It's obviously we have Imogen, our co-founder, in the business as well. And if you look into it, what you find is it's female entrepreneurs receive less funding by a huge amount, as well as less support, and for men as well. There is an emerging kind of movement towards kind of female entrepreneurship and helping to encourage them, and kind of female angel groups, which is great to see. But we felt it's not like we specifically look for female founded businesses from the start. It's more of how our brand has evolved over the years, looking at how the brands we're working with, and also just getting a sense of what our customers are looking for, their interests. So, but yeah, around 80% of our brands are, over 80% of our brands are female founded, and around 60% of our customers are women as well. So we wanted to champion the fact that we were had a wide range of businesses, and with a particular focus on female founded brands. Going forward, one of our key aims for 2022 is to we still have a diverse range of brands from a ethnicity point of view, but what we want to be able to do is to really kind of help to create a platform for a whole range of brands, because ultimately there aren't that many places out there which have a focus on diversity, but also generally helping to promote independent brands, especially working closely with them. So that's a key aspect, is to ensure that our community is representative of the overall community in the UK.
Yeah, I think that's a really nice thing, because it's very easy to lose sight of that when you're running a business with all the day-to-day stresses and like the strategic plan. So yeah, it's nice to hear that. And you talked about eco-credentials, which obviously they're increasingly important to consumers, and they're influencing people's shopping decisions, and it's core to your brand. I'd love to hear, you talked about carbon neutral delivery, which as like a USP is generally quite impactful. How do you go about achieving that? Is it something that you've deliberately done, or is it simply about the carrier partnerships? And has it had any like negative impact in terms of things like cost for the customer?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so as I was saying, with the way our business is set up, is that at the core of everything we do, which isn't always easy, is obviously being an eco-friendly company, conscious company, is difficult, especially being a startup where costs are obviously a key element, but ultimately the reason why we set up Wearth in the first place was to, I guess, be part of this movement towards running companies differently and having profits not necessarily always being at a kind of core aim of the business, especially in the early days. And the delivery is obviously a key aspect of the negative of e-commerce in terms of the emissions produced. So I think it was about 2 years ago, we were looking at solutions to enable us to mitigate all the carbon. So we partner with a third-party company called Climate Partner. And they partner with a range of companies from big companies to startups like us. And we wanted an independent specialist who, how it works is, so we don't deliver any of our products, our brands, and do it. So we're looking at the order data, the delivery distances, product weight. We provide all of this information on an order level in a big spreadsheet, which we send to Climate Partner. And they then calculate how much carbon was produced, and then we pay to offset the carbon through a range of their own accredited schemes, for example, forestation projects. The cost is actually quite low. It's obviously there is a resource in terms of us having to keep on track of all that data, but we review it about every 6 months to a year, and then we go ahead and mitigate it. So in terms of the cost and the practical element, I think that most companies would actually be able to do it without it being affecting the bottom line. It's, I guess, was one of those things where's the priority for that particular business. For us, it's obviously trying to be as green as possible. But I would encourage all e-commerce businesses to be able to do it, because it's an easy win in that sense of being able to help the environment, but also help kind of provide that trust to customers as well.
Carbon neutral delivery is a genuine USP, because there's not many companies that can say that. Do you measure the impact in terms of, well, how can we justify this based on conversion rate and retention? Or is it simply a case of, well, we take that cost because we believe in it from a brand point of view?
I'd say it's both, really. So what we want to demonstrate, especially as we started to evolve the business, is that we want to show that you can create a successful business whilst also having these values at the core of our business. There is obviously a commercial aspect in that we think will help with conversion rate. We don't have any specific data, but it does come up with the reviews and on press. And as I said, with this podcast, you've brought it up as well. So it is an important kind of USP that we have for our business. At the same time, we would have been doing it anyways. It's one of those kind of things that it just makes sense for us to do it as a business. And we want to be kind of part of, as I say, a part of this movement towards creating strong businesses with, at the same time, strong values at the core of what we're doing. So yeah, it has been an important aspect of what we're doing.
Cool. And I'd like to talk about the zero waste range that you have, which again, it's so important. It's minimizing packaging, minimizing waste. And as a consumer, I get so wound up by how much pointless packaging there is and stuff, and it drives me nuts. And I think my kids are utterly bored of me banging on about we're not getting that, we're not getting that, we're not getting that. So, but equally, a lot of businesses have been called out and PR embarrassed around greenwashing, where they claim stuff that can't really be validated or is scientifically argued to not be the right thing to do. So I'd love to know, how do you define zero waste, and how do you validate it so you can't then be pulled up and go, hang on a minute, that's not right?
Yeah, of course. And greenwashing is obviously a very important term in this space, and it's something we have to naturally be very conscious of kind of throughout the business. I think there's a wider context to the question of I think it's important to address first on how we select products on Wearth. So our overarching focus is on working with independent UK brands who have this kind of clear focus on the environment and ethics. It's not just kind of a CSR aspect. It's a lot of these brands have actually started over the last kind of few years in response to the climate emergency. So it's kind of very agile, small startups slash SMEs who really have this clear focus. So we look at the brand holistically in terms of its values, in terms of what it's saying on social media, tone of voice, and of course their products. And then on a category level, we have very specific criteria. So, for example, our jewelry department, we partner with UK jewelry makers who use recycled silver and gold, environmentally friendly packaging, and it helps us to really identify whether a brand and its products is a fit on a category level. Then on a product level, before the products go live, we get additional information. So the main values: is it plastic free? Is it made in the UK? Is it made from recycled materials? We then also get information on the materials, the ingredients, the product and the delivery packaging. And we provide all of this information to the customer so they can make an informed decision and understand why this product isn't worth. Obviously, we look at the product before they go live, but the main aim is to ensure that the products are meeting our values and getting as much information as possible. With regards to zero waste, here the main criteria is on products which, as you alluded to, helps reduce waste and the amount of single-use plastic. And it's obviously very, very important for us to be able to try and address this. It's one of those things where once you kind of realize the impact of plastic, you realize you start to just, you go in a supermarket or walk into many shops and you're just surrounded by plastic, and it can feel quite overwhelming sometimes. And that's one of the reasons why we wanted to create the zero waste category, which had all of these kind of plastic-free, reusable and refillable products, which make it easier to reduce waste. Zero waste in itself is a bit of a contentious term, because some view it as to be unrealistic to produce no waste, and of course that is true. But many regard it also to be a good umbrella term for trying to be more conscious of your waste and reduce where you can, rather than try to fit all of your zero waste in a jar, which for the standard family or individual obviously isn't achievable. So it's really about doing what you can, and this is kind of one of the ethoses here at Wearth, that it's impossible to be this kind of perfect eco warrior, and making small changes can still make a difference. And for us, I think that one of the purposes behind Wearth is to partner with these brands with a clear focus. And also our viewpoint is that if you're smaller, you can tend, and obviously newer to an extent, it's easier to adapt to the market than a bigger brand where it's obviously not as easy. We don't kind of criticize big companies for the products they produce, because ultimately they've been doing this for some companies 20, 30, 50 years. It will naturally take time to adapt. And we always are encouraged when we see big companies doing things. I think there is another kind of wider context in that it's very easy to be critical of other companies, and I don't think it's obviously very important that we're ensuring that greenwashing isn't taking place and that we're checking the products and I'm talking on a society level here. At the same time, if a company is trying its best with the conditions and the context that it has, we should be encouraging that rather than always focusing on the negative, because I think that doesn't necessarily help the overall kind of movement towards trying to live in a more conscious way.
Yeah, true. You've got a loyalty program. A couple of questions of that, 'cause loads of people either do loyalty or are interested and are always thinking, is it really worth it? How should we do it? Do people really care? So, love to know, do you use a specific technology for loyalty? And then also, what have you learned? What works? What actually gets people to buy into a loyalty program?
Yeah, so we use Smile.io for our loyalty scheme. Again, kind of a company that 5874 have worked with in the past. We launched it at the same time as the website, so only a couple of months ago now. But so it's still a little bit early to know the kind of the impact on retention and purchase frequency. Although the early signs are good. So in the last 30 days, we had about 675 members join the scheme. And one of the ways I think we've helped to encourage people to join it is to brand it, not just have like, oh, join our loyalty scheme. We wanted to, sorry, 1 second. we wanted to have this kind of idea of the Wearth circle. So really kind of trying to create a community where people ultimately being able to save 10% on all their orders, as well as kind of being part of a rewards program where they can kind of share with their friends. And I think that's what we're trying to achieve. And it's not easy, as I say, kind of loyalty schemes, I think, can work and sometimes don't. I think something that Smile.io told us, and I think is important when thinking about creating a scheme, is having the rewards relatively quick. So kind of within around 3 purchases, for example, being able for the customer to get a reward. Because I think sometimes it can feel like you need to kind of spend £1,000 before you get anything back. So I think being for the customers to be able to see that they can actually start to earn these points quite quickly. It also, I think, depends on the company. For us, what we're trying to, because we have like a range of kind of cleaning products and toiletries and from to gifts and kind of homewares, we have a lot of products where we're trying to encourage people to come back and it's these products, for example, the toiletries, as you say, with the natural deodorant. By using that on a day-to-day basis, you're helping to reduce waste in terms of that deodorant you'd be using, kind of a non-recyclable version. These everyday products are the products which have the biggest impact, and we want to be encouraging people to be using them, and being able to offer a loyalty program like Smile should hopefully help. But as I say, it's a little bit too early to tell, but I guess it's positive that we are getting a decent amount of signups early on.
Cool. Yeah, I know a few other people using Smile. It's interesting to see that mentioned. And one last technology question. So obviously, checkout's critical to any e-commerce site. Brand drives so much like traffic and retention, but if the checkout's a mess, you can lose people quite easily. You've got fast checkout, and we're seeing the likes of Fast and Bolt really starting to take off on e-commerce. I'd love to be able to share some information with people. Like, what impact have you found with Fast? Like, why did you go with Fast, and what percentage of people do you find go straight to that rather than going through your normal checkout and using other payment methods?
Yeah, checkout, as you say, is so kind of fundamental for a good website, and to an extent, I think can make or break a website, which is unfortunate sometimes, given the kind of you've persuaded the customer to, or encourage the customer to find the products which they want, and they get to checkout, and then if the experience isn't positive, maybe they'll drop out then, or they'll purchase once, and that would be it. I think Fast is a good example of what I touched upon earlier about the app ecosystem and being able to easily add new features to a site with BigCommerce. And I think going forward, as the kind of BigCommerce seems to have quite big plans in terms of the ecosystem, their general features, that I think the website will naturally evolve over time as well. So we obviously wanted to have as an efficient and best solution out there for our checkout. The BigCommerce checkout in general is pretty good. It's a one-page checkout, whereas before we had about 3 pages, which is nice. But what we wanted to have is a one-click checkout solution on the product page. And we came across Fast and 587 Forward were starting to learn about them as well. And it's really kind of made, I think, quite a significant difference already. This kind of one-click checkout solutions only really been available to big players like Amazon up until recently, and now Fast have come along, and I think that there is a potential for it to. They've raised a crazy amount of money and backed by Stripe, so I think there is a significant opportunity for it to be its own brand in its own right, for example, similar to PayPal or Stripe, given the time and the kind of development that they're doing. It represents around 14% of our sales at the moment, which I think is pretty decent, especially as I say, I think as a brand grows and people understand what Fast actually means in terms of they can check out quickly and they have their account details already there. We expect that this will grow over time. And how it effectively works is that basically, if you're on a product, you can click onto the Fast checkout. It will take you straight to that checkout. You can either go back to the site and add any more orders, but you basically have 5 minutes to do that. I don't think it doesn't delete the order, but that's just how it works. And then you basically just enter the information very quickly. If you obviously already got an account, you basically just press pay, and that's done. It's similar to PayPal Express, but say it's more on a product level, which is, we do have PayPal as well, but it's just another option to provide our customers. What's been interesting is looking at the AOV. So for Fast, it's about £25, whereas our AOV kind of varies between £35 and £40. So people are spending less. I think it's indicative of people who are our customers already know, if they already know what they're looking for. For example, you're buying your deodorant again. You want to buy it quickly and get on with your day. You could use it to quickly purchase and stock up on that. We are also looking at adding in subscriptions. The issue being is that we're looking at mini BC as a way of adding them in. The only issue is that Fast isn't compatible with subscriptions yet, and so it doesn't. And so mini BC wouldn't work. Or well, it would work, but if the customer went through to the Fast checkout, then it wouldn't work that way. So we're trying to come up with a solution there where we can have both Fast and a subscription, but it's not clear yet. But I guess that's a good example of the importance. So we spent about 6 weeks with 5874 doing a discovery phase, and obviously at that time there was less knowledge about Fast, albeit now they would say that it wouldn't be possible. But I think it's good to have a general roadmap in terms of how these features will interact with each other, and that's a good example of an area where they're not compatible together. So I think it's always important to have that phase of delivery where, well, the phase of planning where you're really understanding your tech architecture. Because I think when it gets to the build stage, there's inevitably going to be small things here and there, like the subscriptions, where it wasn't possible. But if there's that roadmap, it really makes it easy to follow the progress and know what the end result's going to be as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess that helps you make better decisions in your user journey of, well, actually, if we know there's a subscription product, we disable Fast in the checkout is one option. And yeah, it's interesting. I mean, this is why we love these podcasts, because people get to realize that, oh, actually, if I'm going to use this, which seems great, but I then want to add this other process or flow in, I might have to think that through in more detail. One related question is, you said AOV's low, which I'm not surprised, because I use Fast Checkout because I wanted to know what it looked like as a customer, and the editing, the order is brilliant. If you're like, oh, I forgot to add that, or I only wanted to. But does it drive greater purchase frequency? Do you know yet, or is it too early days to know?
It is still too early days, but one of the reasons why we have Fast, one of the reasons why we've implemented a loyalty scheme, and there's obviously lots of benefits to the marketplace model, and there's downsides as well. One is obviously defensibility, and the customer can easily go purchase elsewhere onto the brand's website, and to an extent on some marketplaces, although the breadth of products and brands we have in the eco-friendly space is pretty large. But one of the reasons, for example, to have Fast is to have the best kind of customer experience out there and make it as easy as possible for everyone. Has their busy lives. It's not, and obviously it's not easy to be eco-friendly generally, but even spending time on e-commerce websites, you obviously want to keep it as efficient as possible, providing information and then allowing people to quickly check out. So I think it will help with frequency over time. I'd say it's a little bit too early to know, but I think the early indications is that it would. So yeah, it's a really interesting tool, and I think they are planning on, for example, introducing subscriptions at some stage. So it'd be interesting to see how they develop as a payment gateway as well. Yeah,
it is interesting. Ed, I've really enjoyed this episode. Personal bias for me as well, because I've been a customer for a good few months with you guys, and my kids love your products as well. So number one, thanks for making an amazing brand and for something that's a positive story out there. But also thank you for taking the time to share your kind of insights into building out this business.
Mm-hmm. No, I really appreciate it. It's been great to kind of reflect on what's been over a year process. We started looking at a new website in about December in terms of choosing a platform. And then in February, we started to work with 5874. So it's been nice to kind of reflect on what we've done. And for us now, it's about seeing what we can. Now we have the website, it's about obviously taking things to the next level. And one thing we haven't really touched upon, and other reasons why I went with BigCommerce is, obviously I talked about headless, but one thing we wanted to do with the new website was to be able to launch a new content platform with lots of different authors. And we had a blog before which was performing well, but it wasn't very kind of branded. It wasn't kind of particularly pretty. It was one of the downsides of a kind of an e-commerce blog. So what we were able to do is, with BigCommerce, with their WordPress plugin, is to actually have the WordPress run our blog and sit within the main URL /blog via reverse proxy, which has just enabled us to really. It's only launched in November, so we're starting to develop the content out now. But it's just given us the freedom with WordPress to really take the content side of to the next level, whilst also having BigCommerce running all the e-commerce side of things. So that flexibility, I think, is a good example of, compared to Shopify, where I think they are moving towards headless and integrating things like WordPress. But I think BigCommerce at the moment, as a platform, seems to be a little bit ahead in that sense.
The joys of no platform is 100% perfect, and you pick it based on its best merits. It's always a fun process for any business. But thanks ever so much for taking the time, and thanks to everyone who listened in. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I've done. Keep your ears open for the next episode. As I say, they land most Tuesdays. And please do subscribe if you haven't already, and give us a rating on Apple, Spotify, YouTube. Helps our visibility and encourage us to keep producing this content. So until next week, everybody. For more information on this topic, head over to replatform.fm for our audio podcasts. To discuss a project, or if you'd like to chat about any of the topics covered in this episode in more detail, please reach out to myself, James Gurd, or my co-host Paul Rogers via LinkedIn and Twitter. Thanks again for listening, and keep your ears peeled for the next episode.